Welcome to Sacerdotus Hangouts, the broadcast that answers doubts about God, the Catholic Church, science, philosophy, and other worldly topics you're weird out.
Hello, welcome to Sacerdotus Hangouts Atheist Open Mic. Now, unfortunately, again, atheists have contacted me regarding participating in the Hangouts tonight. That's unfortunate indeed because the reason why I have these Hangouts is for them to, well, namely for them, anybody else is also welcome, but it's for atheists to come and discuss things, bring up topics to discuss, ask questions, bring up any misconceptions and whatnot, and then we move on from there and continue the discussion and see where it goes. And again, this is not a debate. It's not shouldn't be a shouting match thing or whatnot, or a Jerry Springer type thing where everybody's hollering at each other and insulting each other, but just a civil discussion, intellectual academic discussion on different things related to God, faith, religion, science, atheism, and so forth. Now, a lot of things happened this week, and I was hoping to have at least one or two atheists present to discuss it. And one is the new encyclical that Pope Francis just released on Wednesday. And this encyclical, or rather on Thursday, this encyclical entitled Laudato Si, which means praise be, is from the Canticle of Preachers from St. Francis of Assisi, who Pope Francis took the name Francis from. And there was a lot of controversy surrounding this encyclical. And an encyclical, it means, comes from the Latin from the Greek encyclos, which means to go in the circles, to circulate. And it's pretty much a letter teaching that should circulate around and have a message, a content, and so forth. And the encyclical is supposed to be a teaching, instructing the bishops on certain things that are going on in the church or in the world, and reaffirming the faith at the same time while addressing whatever it is the encyclical is trying to address. Now, this encyclical, Laudato Si, is focused on the environment. Now, there was a lot of controversy on this encyclical because, unfortunately, we have politics all over the place. And political views are very powerful. People adhere to them. Some of them will fight for them. Some of them may even die for political views. And in the church, unfortunately, Catholics are not spared from that. So we have within the church different factions. Just those that call themselves traditionalists, those that call themselves conservatives, those that call themselves liberals, and those that call themselves progressives, moderates, and so forth. So unfortunately, they tend to represent Catholicism in a political manner or political way. And to me, that's just wrong. I disagree with that. You're a Catholic and you're a Catholic. That's it. There's no other label there that should be applied. A quote that I paraphrase from Mother Angelica, from EWTN's Mother Angelica, is that I'm neither conservative or liberal. I'm just Catholic, period. And that's how it should be. But unfortunately, it's not. So we have these different groups within the Catholic Church. people identify via these political terms of conservatism, liberalism, progressivism, and so forth. So, being that they adhere to these political views, when they learned that this encyclical was coming out and they heard it had to do with the environment, those that call themselves conservatives or the right or whatever, they were concerned because, again, since they adhere to these conservative political views, they felt the Pope was a progressive, a liberal, because to them, a Pope is supposed to be conservative, traditional, whatnot. So any slight deviation from that, they automatically think that the Pope is a heretic or that there is no Pope. That it's a Sede Vacantis thing, that the See of Rome is empty. There really is no legitimate Pope. And of course, that's all nonsense. This is stupidity, in my opinion. And when they talk of the environment and the ecology and so forth, these so-called conservative Christians or not Catholic Christians, they were concerned that the Pope would pretty much attack the conservative view, which is namely that global warming is not taking effect, that climate change is not happening, that it's a hoax and whatnot. And that tends to be the platform of conservatives, that they seem to believe that nothing's going on, that everything's fine and dandy in nature, when in reality it's not. Everything's not fine and dandy in creation. And I was surprised myself when I was tweeting during the announcement of the encyclical. Some Catholics mentioned me or messaged me on Twitter asking what pollution, when I wrote something about that we have to clean up the pollution and stop polluting the earth. Somebody actually asked me what pollution, and I did not know if this person was kidding or not, because I mean, what kind of question is that? What pollution? We see it all over the place: landfill, smog. In China, there's areas in China and Beijing and so forth that you see the smog, it looks like a fog. That's how polluted it is. People had to wear masks to walk into the street. How horrible it is. And the Hudson River in New York, how polluted it used to be, and it's still polluted, but it's better now. But nevertheless, it's still dirty. You wouldn't want to drink in there or swim in there or eat any fish from there. And we have all these different parts of the world that have landfills and whatnot. And for somebody, a Catholic, to ask me what pollution, I mean, what planet are you living on that you're not aware that there's pollution in this world? And not to mention that we know the ozone layer has a hole in it. Thank God it's sealing up, but still we caused that hole to open up because of the pollution and carbon dioxide and so forth that's released into the atmosphere, the CFCs and whatnot. So unfortunately, these Catholics adhere to these conservative ideas and whatnot, I guess out of loyalty and whatnot, and they completely ignore the fact that we have to take care of the planet. I mean, this is, if you believe in God, you believe that God is the creator, then you have to understand that this planet is not ours. I mean, we did not create it. We have no right to destroy it and whatnot. So the Pope wrote this document. He consulted with scientists and different experts on the field, and he presented his arguments for the preservation of planet Earth. And to this day, to this hour, I'm just baffled at the people that are giving the Pope a bad reception, giving the encyclical a bad reception, because what is wrong with trying to keep the earth clean? to trying to preserve the earth for future generation. What is wrong with that? What is the problem? The earth is not ours to just litter and destroy and pollute. We have to take care of it. We have to protect it. So I'm happy the Pope released this document. It's a very powerful document. In my opinion, it's an encyclical that has used the most science. I mean, it's second to following, I should say, Humane Vitae, which use some scientific terminology in regards to reproduction and whatnot. And one Catholic reaction as a layperson, Michael Voris, who's very controversial in the church, he was banned from speaking in many dioceses because of his approach and whatnot. He likes to go and make videos and whatnot criticizing bishops and the Pope and so forth. So he wasted no time to go after the Pope on this encyclical, Laudato Si. And in his video, he claims that the Catholics are not obliged to follow anything because they're only because the encyclical is mostly science and political and whatnot. And he just goes off. And my response to that is that the Pope has to do his research. If he's going to write on something, he has to do his research. So he has to be alert. He has to have knowledge of what he's going to write about. Otherwise, the whole thing will not make any sense. So while science doesn't have to do anything with faith and morals, yeah, he's correct. But still, if the church, if the Pope is going to present dogma and doctrine to the world, and it's related to scientific things or whatnot, then he has to include both in order to make his argument. And for example, condoms, birth control pills, in vitro fertilization, and so forth. These modern and postmodern concepts did not exist thousands of years ago. If we go back 1,000 years or not, and we spoke to Pope Urban I or Pope Saint Damasus I or Pope Benedict XI about rubber condoms and birth control pills and featuring fertilization and whatnot, these popes will look at us like we're crazy. What the heck are you talking about? Because those things didn't exist in that time. That technology, those concepts, those words did not exist in the way that we use them today. But popes in the modern age used them in encyclicals. For example, Blessed Paul VI, who used it in Humane Vitae to condemn the use of birth control and other forms of manipulating reproduction and whatnot. And what did he do? He had scientists and other medical professionals advise him, give him information. And then he incorporated all that into the teaching of the church, which is used to today. So Pope Francis is doing the same thing, but with ecology. He's making the case that we have to protect the earth, that we're stewards of the earth and so forth. And he's including the data that's available regarding ecology and whatnot. And there's nothing wrong with this. And as far as this being political, I mean, that's nonsense. Keeping the earth clean and safe and limiting pollution is not political. It's a human thing. This is our planet. We have to take care of it. It's our world. So what does that have to do with politics? It has nothing to do with politics at all. It has to do with the human race caring for this planet, this world. So that's pretty much what the encyclical entailed. And again, I was hoping that some atheists would show up and we would get into a bit of a discussion on this regarding the encyclical that was released, and just to hear their views on the whole matter, because a lot of atheists tend to side with liberalism, and part of the branch of liberalism is fighting for the environment, protecting the environment, and so forth. So it would have been nice to hear their side, but unfortunately they seem to be afraid of me, but that's another story. So I guess it will be another monologue tonight, and I'll try to keep it short, but just wanted to touch on the release of the encyclical. And hopefully anyone listening, any atheists out there listening who did not want to participate or didn't contact me to participate, but is still listening to me right now, hopefully you get a chance to look at this document, this encyclical, and see it, how it makes a lot of sense. I mean, yes, the Pope is going to quote from scripture and church teaching and whatnot. Of course, he has to do that. But I think the message in Laudato Si is universal. It's a call to all of us, Catholic and non-Catholic, theist or atheist or agnostic or whatever, to clean up the earth, to try to keep it clean, limit the carbon emissions, get rid of the fossil fuels and all these things that are archaic, that are doing harm to the planet, and find better means to power up our technology and whatever we design in the new future. And I think that's a message that will be well accepted even in the atheist community. I'm not aware that Dawkins or Krauss or any other main figure in atheism making any commentary on the cyclical or whatnot, but I will find it odd if any of them disagree with the Pope's call to keep the earth clean, to try new forms of energy and so forth, because if we kill the planet, if we destroy this planet, then we will go with it. And the other day, somebody on Twitter messaged me asking me, do I think that the Pope preaches to save souls or whatnot, or is the Pope focusing on saving souls? So in other words, this person was insinuating that the Pope has his priorities mixed, and he's writing on the environment instead of writing about salvation and going to heaven and avoiding sin and asking people to repent and condemning bad behavior, sinful behavior, and so forth. But we have to be realistic. I mean, all of that will not be possible if we destroy the earth. If we destroy the earth, we cannot evangelize, we cannot preach, we cannot pray or do anything, because we will be dead, we will be extinct. If we kill the planet, it's common sense. Unless some believer out there or some atheist out there knows of a way for the human being to survive in space, like a tardigrade or something, but we're not capable of that. Earth is the only home that we have, and we have to take care of it. So, while yes, the church, the Pope has to evangelize and convert the world, and we have to preach the gospel to the four corners of the world, of course, yes, that's a given. But notice the four corners of the world part. We had to do it in the world. And then we destroy the world with pollution and whatnot, then no preaching is going to take place, no baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is going to take place, because there will be no planet, there will be no home. So this is something that conservatives, Republicans, anyone who adheres to that faction, that political ideology, needs to wake up to. That we have to protect the planet, we have to clean it up, we have to stop what we're doing, find a better way to do it that would preserve us now and those in the future, so that we will not become extinct and other non-human creatures won't become extinct either. And climate change is real. Somebody messaged me the other day telling me, pretty much insulting me and this priest and another person, telling us that the weather changes all the time, that there's nothing wrong with the world because weather changes all the time. And I smiled because you could see the ignorance in this person. This person either never studied science or wasn't paying attention. There's a difference between climate and weather. Weather changes all the time, of course. It gets hot, cold, it rains all of a sudden during the day, it gets humid, or the sun might pop out and it gets hot. That's weather. But the climate is different. The climate is set, pretty much. For example, the tropics, the climate is going to be a certain way all the time. In the north, the climate is going to be a certain way all the time. And so forth. And it changes slightly every couple thousand years, but not much to notice. That's the difference. So this person was conflating weather with climate, and that's just ignorance right there. We know that the climate is changing because instead of taking thousands of years, it's happening every year, every decade or so. We're seeing these drastic changes in the climate. And the studies show that the ice caps are melting at an extraordinary rate. These things, these huge blocks of ice, these glaciers that make up Antarctica in the north, they're melting away, disappearing. Now, this is, you're probably wondering what big deal is that, ice melts all the time. Well, it is a big deal. Since this ice is melting, it's fresh water that's being injected into the ocean. And as you know, if you've been in the water in the ocean, it's salty. So when this ice melts, it disturbs the pH and salt balance of the world's ocean. Now, again, you might say it's not a big deal. I mean, so what? It's making the salt water less salty, right? What's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal because this affects the food chain, the organisms that live in the ocean, the plankton, all the way up to the blue whale. It affects them because they're not used to these changes and they're not designed in a way to adapt to these changes quickly in order to survive. So what happens is they start dying off. And as you learn in science, you learn about the food chain. Bigger prey tends to eat the smaller prey, and so forth. So what happens when this food supply starts getting disrupted? Certain groups within the food supply will start starving and they will die off. And it causes a chain reaction. So we will start seeing extinction of different species in the water, in the ocean. This is why we're seeing so many shark attacks. Last week, I believe, or this week, early this week, a young girl and a boy were attacked by sharks in the south, in the Carolinas. The shark bit off one boy's arm and completely took it right off and bit off the hand of the girl. Now, for an animal to bite off an arm, that means that it was really hungry, it was aggressive. Usually sharks will bite and then they get startled and go back in because they realize it's a larger animal. In this case, a human. That's typically what they do. They bite and then they back off when they realize it's not a seal or something else that they're used to eating. But in this case, this shark or sharks went right at these kids, took off the boy's arm, took off the girl's hand. That's telling us that this shark was hungry, or sharks is hungry. I mean, what would you do if you had no food for weeks? And all of a sudden you see a piece of pie there just laying down the table. You're going to jump at it and bite it, grab it, shove it in your mouth because you're hungry, you're starving. So this is what we're seeing now with these shark attacks and whatnot that are taking place because of the disruption in the food chain. And moreover, the change of the water temperature, because as the ice goes in, the water temperature starts changing. Weather patterns start changing as well, because where does rain come from? From the evaporated water from the oceans. It's all interconnected. The whole planet is like a system. It's like a computer system. It's like a clock with sprockets. And if you take one sprocket out, it disrupts the whole flow of the clock. The same thing with nature, with Earth. It's like a clock. It's like a process, a program. Not literally, but metaphorically. And you disrupt one piece of it, it disrupts the whole system. It goes haywire. And then you add the carbon dioxide, the CO2 levels in the atmosphere. They start collecting up there. And you're probably wondering, oh, what's the big deal about that? We release carbon dioxide from out when we exhale, right? Yeah, we do, but it's not allowed to really cause damage. But when we burn things, factories and cars and so forth, it does release a lot of carbon dioxide and it gets collected in the atmosphere. And what happens? This carbon dioxide up there, collecting up there, starts trapping ultraviolet rays. What happens after that? It starts heating up. The world starts heating up, which causes even more fluctuations in the temperature and the weather of the planet. So then we start seeing these big, huge storms that we haven't seen. These winters with all the snow, Boston had all the snow and whatnot. All these tropical hurricanes and typhoons that we haven't seen, washing out villages and whatnot. And that's a result of this disruption of the climate. So this is something that's real, that's something that's going on, that we have to address. And I'm glad that the Pope, the Holy Father, wrote a document on the climate and the environment and our responsibility to it. So kudos to him. And a lot of scientists are happy that the Pope did this finally, because it gives them more credibility if they really needed it. For years, for decades, scientists have been warning that we have to do something about the weather, about the pollution, the environment. And governments have ignored them. And one scientist, a climate scientist, Dr. Catherine Hayhoe, she said, quote, someone else who has a lot of influence in the world. So that is so encouraging, so exciting. It's like, oh my goodness, the Pope gets it. We become scientists because we love science. Communicating we don't do as well. Now the Pope is doing that for us, end quote. So the Pope is using the powerful voice of Rome, of the Church, to pretty much call the world to save the world, call the human race to save the world. And that's important. And Carl Sagan, the late scientist Carl Sagan, astronomer, he put it beautifully in his book, The Pale Blue Dot, which is very poetic, and it speaks well and goes along well with the encyclical Laudato Si. And Carl Sagan wrote, quote, our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness. There is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit, yes. Settle, not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the earth is where we make our stand. End quote. Carl Sagan was correct. The earth is where we make our stand. It's the only place that we called home. So we have to do something to take care of it, to make sure that it's preserved not only for us, but for future generations. Now, moving on from that topic, I wanted to bring up the tragedy in South Carolina with the Emmanuel Church, AME Emmanuel Church, Episcopal Methodist Church, that was attacked by this supremacist. Now, there's rumors going out there that he was an atheist, but I have not been able to confirm that. But I have been able to confirm news reports that he is in fact a racist. He did not like African Americans, black people. And he apparently went inside his church and he sat down in a Bible study and was participating in the Bible study. And the people there even welcomed him. And then he just comes out of nowhere and he starts shooting them, killing 9 of them. And says that the black people raped their women and did this and that, and then they need to go. And then he just fled in his car. And the whole news is just troubling. It shows how ugly things are in the world, and that racism is still alive and well. And this young man, unfortunately, was influenced by something or someone. And I feel that needs to be investigated, because it might be, or they might be influencing somebody else. So that has to really be looked into. Otherwise, this cycle of hate, of racism, will continue to flourish and go about and inspire people, especially impressionable young people, to commit these horrific crimes. So, fortunately, I was hoping to discuss that as well with any atheists out there, but they did not show up. So I'm going to check quickly if there's any questions or anything, comments that I'm receiving here. And as I'm looking, I do not see anything here. I do not see anything here, so I guess they seem to be reluctant or afraid to contact me or not. But again, these atheist hangouts are for atheists or anybody else to just come and talk and speak and whatnot. And bring up any questions, any topics, any suggestions, or any misconceptions or whatnot. And then we just try to talk through it. Again, it's not meant to be a debate. There's no winner or loser, no draw, nothing like that. It's just a discussion at all. So any atheists out there should not be worried or concerned or whatnot. Because then I start to suspect that you're not an atheist, that you're just using Google Plus and these different things to pretend to be an atheist and get attention and pretend to be the big bad boy or big bad girl, and you're not really serious about your alleged atheism. Because if you're not able to represent atheists live on a broadcast, but yeah, you're willing to just hide behind a comment thread, and that's very suspect. I mean, either you're not confident to speak to somebody live in real time, and you prefer to use or hide behind a comment thread where you could easily edit and where you could space out your response in order to control the flow of the conversation and whatnot. It really does not make any sense for you to try that. unless you are not really an atheist, you're not knowledgeable, and you will not be able to present the same personality or the same intelligence that you try to present on comment boards as you in the broadcast. I mean, that speaks a lot about the atheists of today. They're not confident in their own atheism. They need to use these comment boards or Twitter and all these things as a safe, they blanket as a safe haven in order to present their views. And most of the time, they're just trolling. So I tend not to take a lot of them seriously. But a lot of them want to communicate with me. They send me messages. As soon as I tweet something or post something somewhere, they quickly send me a message, comments, or questions, whatnot. That's why I decided to do this Atheist Open Mic, to give them a platform where they could talk to me live instead of typing back and forth. And obviously, they're not really paying attention to it for the obvious reasons that they don't feel comfortable actually discussing live, where you cannot edit anything. You cannot wait a day or two, an hour, 3 hours to respond. You have to think quickly on your feet and respond on your feet. So that's how it is, it seems. So as I said, I'm going to keep it short, and I think I'll end it there. Until the next Atheist Open Mic, hopefully we'll get participants to join and get into the discussion. Thank you for listening. God bless and Mary keep, and may the victims of the AME Emmanuel Church, Episcopal Methodist Church, our brothers and sisters in the Protestant faith, may the victims rest in peace, and may God console their families. And we also pray for the young man, Dylan Roof, who committed these crimes, killing 9 people, innocent people. We pray for him that he may repent and change, have a change of heart, and face justice as well. Bye now.